Hello, my lovelies. Today, we're talking about the sweet spots in your home and your life and your personality. And when you figure this one out, your life transforms in so many ways. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Bemis, your host, personality expert, and personal development lover. And today, we're diving into a topic that changed my life in more ways than I can tell you. But suffice it to say that without this incredibly simple but powerful concept, I would not be the person that I am today. And if anything in this podcast resonates with you, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. For those who are new to the podcast, when I talk about personalities, communication, and relationships, I use the DISC personality model of behavior and refer to people as D or driven, I or inspired, S or supportive, and C or cautious. You can find links to take your own personality assessment in the show notes. So what does the sweet spot have to do with any of this? A lot. So let's get to it. To start, if you know sports, you know about the sweet spot. It's the place on the ball, the bat, the stick, or the playing field where all of your training comes together and everything works together seamlessly. There's no better feeling as an athlete than finding the sweet spot. People also call the sweet spot being in the zone. It's where you perform effortlessly. And while it takes training to get there, when you do get there, it feels amazing. Believe it or not, the same thing applies to taking care of your home and creating a fantastic life. The difference with your life is that the sweet spot can change. But when you know how to find it, you can adapt with the flow of life and prevent getting knocked off kilter when things invariably do change. Today, we're going to start with talking about the sweet spot of your home for several reasons. You see, I work with several at-home entrepreneurs, and their home can be a huge source of stress because when they're working, they feel like they're neglecting their home and family. And when they're caring for their home and family, they feel like they're neglecting their work and career. The problem then becomes that neither gets your full attention and both get slighted because you've always got split energy. That sometimes leads to women entrepreneurs telling me that they don't care about the state of their home. But when you ask them how they would feel if someone that they respected showed up at their house unannounced, seeing the public area of their home, you get the real answer about how they feel. The driven women are angry because they don't like those kind of surprises. The I women are embarrassed, but they'll invite you in and they'll make excuses while they feel mortified and will beat themselves up mentally later. The S woman may hide behind a curtain or not even answer the door because they're so embarrassed about the state of their home, they couldn't bear for someone to see it. And the C women are angry because the person showed up without proper time for them to make the home presentable. And if they answer the door, which is unlikely, they will not be welcoming. All of which tells me that having that type of home situation isn't what they want. And I've seen it literally be the reason that people avoid their business and quit because of their house situation. So let's fix that. Listen, if you're a person who struggles with keeping up with your home, I am not here to judge you. I promise that. I'm someone who struggles with this to this day, but finding the sweet spot will completely change things for you. I promise. Why? Because I know what it's like to look around and wonder where the heck to start. Because everything feels like it needs attention. And that sucks because overwhelm is an action killer. Knowing the sweet spot gives you a starting point, and the more you pay attention to it, the better things get. It's weird and it's wonderful and it's life-changing. So if you're someone who keeps a pretty tidy home, but you feel overwhelmed if things get out of order, finding the sweet spot will help you too, because it helps you find peace before the chaos overwhelms you. You'll be able to communicate what needs to be done with your family, and your sweet spot becomes a place of peace rather than tension. Plus, it takes the mental load off of you if the family knows what to address as well. So, how do we find it? Here's how I found mine. When we moved into our house in 2002, we had boxes everywhere for weeks. And I honestly wondered if we'd ever get to sit down together to have a meal in our new home. I remember thinking if I could just get the kitchen table cleared, everything else would fall into place. And when I did, everything did fall into place temporarily. I'm telling you, it felt like there was a clutter magnet and a paper magnet in that table. And as soon as I would get it cleared, more clutter and paper piles would pop up. And it was maddening. I wanted to cry, and I did several times because I truly thought that moving into a bigger house would solve our clutter problem. But I was wrong. And during that time, I truly thought I had some kind of personality defect. More on that later. But what I eventually learned was that in my home, the sweet spot is the kitchen table. I know it doesn't sound so sweet right now, but stay with me. One of the most interesting lessons I learned is that the sweet spot both represents and reflects how my life is going at any given time. If my life feels cluttered and overwhelming, you can bet that that table is filled with clutter and paper piles. If I feel clear headed, hopeful, and energetic, the table is clear or at least mostly clear. I often wondered if the table was a reflection of my life or an indication of it. And then I figured out it doesn't matter which it is. It doesn't matter whether the clutter and paper cause my overwhelm or my overwhelm causes the clutter and paper to pile up, because once it happens, if I don't deal with it, the two seem to feed on each other and make the situation worse. What I finally came to grips with was the idea that as wonderful as it feels to see the sweet spot clean and clear, it doesn't stay that way, especially if you have a family. And I know that may sound discouraging and defeatist, but it's not. Because if you understand the impermanent nature of clear space, you can actually embrace the idea that the clutter and paper piles are temporary and manageable too. I think that's really cool. For me, that was a game changer. And if you have trouble believing this because you've got messes or piles that seem to be unending, I have some great news for you because I know the secrets to dealing with them too. First, we accept that nothing in life stays the same. I know, especially for the C personalities who are not fond of change, that's a tough pill to swallow. But understand that we bathe regularly to stay clean. We do laundry regularly to have clean clothes. We mow the grass regularly to keep the yard nice. We get haircuts to keep ourselves looking presentable. The sweet spot works the same way because it requires regular maintenance to stay clean and clear. In short, it basically just needs a plan. So, what's the plan? Here's the best part for all personality types. The sweet spot, when attended to regularly, changes your life in the best way. In my case, I spend a few moments putting things away, dealing with the paperwork that's ended up on my kitchen table. Then I wipe down my table and it looks amazing. I'm talking about a 5-minute time investment. That's about it, friends. Now, I know that the driven and inspired personalities love that, while the supportive and cautious personalities are skeptical about it. But I promise you it's true. There are occasions still where the piles get ahead of me during a busy day or a busy week, but with the magic of 15 minutes, which is another tactic that I use so very often in my life, the table is almost always clear enough to serve dinner without looking over piles of paper while we eat. And if we have a night or two that we eat in the living room, it's not that big of a deal. What's even better is that when I'm cranky and overwhelmed and I just can't figure out why, I look at my table and know that if I see piles, they're practically screaming for attention. Then I set my timer for 15 minutes and get to work. The results are usually pretty astounding. As I purge, put away, and recycle, and I feel my mood start to shift for the better. It feels like magic because it's so simple and powerful, and yet I marvel at the impact of it every time. I set the timer and I see what kind of results they bring, and it just blows me away. Then I get to be reminded of how awesome that is every time I walk into the room. There's another blessing in the sweet spot, and this is one that was a little more difficult for my people oriented brain and personality to embrace. It's that those piles and that clutter represent procrastination and unmade decisions. I fully understood the procrastination part, but the unmade decisions part was new to me. And that's where the beauty of the timer comes in. For a recent example, this year we changed insurance companies for the first time in nearly a decade. I have two family members who take multiple life saving medications. So it is quite the process to make sure everything gets taken care of, including updating paperwork for my youngest son's medical binder. We spent an entire afternoon on the phone, he and I, because he's an adult now. We spent an entire afternoon on the phone with the insurance company, the specialty pharmacy, his doctor's office, a copay assistance program that we belong to, just to make sure that all of his meds were ready for shipment. Fun fact, my son, who's in his early 20s, detests talking on the phone. So several hours on the phone is not the way he would want to spend an afternoon. Afterward, I had changes to add to his medical information. And I let that binder sit there for a couple of weeks because I felt like I didn't have the time to get the things done that I needed to get done. Could I have made my son do it? Yes, but he struggles with procrastination as much as I do. And I didn't even know which file to update because it had been nearly a decade since we had changed the providers. And it was on some kind of saved area that I had to go looking for it. But piles were starting to pile up. So I grabbed the binder and decided to finally update the paperwork. Guess what? Everything seemed to get easier after that. And it was like, boom, all of a sudden the table was cleared off. So, have you figured out from listening what your home sweet spot is yet? It may be the same as mine, or it might be different. The woman I learned this concept from didn't call it a sweet spot. She called it something else. And for her, it was her kitchen sink. That clean sink was like a beacon for her. But after trying it her way for months, things weren't getting any better in my house. So I sat down and I asked myself, what part of my home was bothering me the most? And that was an easy answer: the kitchen table. But again, my sweet spot may not be the same as yours. I have a friend whose sweet spot is their kitchen island. For another, it's her entry area. Others have found it something entirely different, like cleaning out their purse or their car. The cool part is that it doesn't matter what that spot is as long as you find it and begin making positive changes by addressing it. I even know someone whose bedside table is their sweet spot. And it was delightful to find out that she even slept better once that table was clear. I'm telling you, I feel so great when I walk into my kitchen and I see that clear table. I feel accomplished and inspired to do even more. And I encourage you to find that place for yourself. Figure out the one place in your home that makes you smile the most when it's under control and or causes you the most stress when it's out of control. In my previous home, it was my entry area because when my children would walk in, they dropped everything right there in front of the door, and no amount of nagging changed anything. So, know what I did? I found some very large baskets. One was for shoes, and one was for backpacks, jackets, and coats, which my kids refused to hang up. It wasn't perfect, but it kept the entry area clear of clutter because they would drop things into those baskets, and that was good enough for me. Initially, when you find your sweet spot, it might take more than 15 minutes to address it fully. But I strongly suggest limiting yourself to 15 minutes at a time, or even 15 minutes per day at the beginning to prevent overwhelm. And of course, that depends on your personality. Driven personalities, I know you're going to get her done. So You do you, boo. I also know you're going to move faster than most people move. So, what some people could take a half an hour to do, you can probably get done in 15 minutes because you're in a hurry. For the inspired personalities, you think you can get it all done in an hour tops, but trust me when I tell you that you, more than any other personality type, will benefit from this 15-minute time limit. That way, you won't wind up in your bedroom with a Mardi Gras mask on and fake nails and reading a book when you plan to clear off your kitchen table. And if you've seen the meme, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, for the supportive personality, you know you're probably going to be interrupted at some point. And the great thing is that this is a wonderful way for you to practice setting a boundary by telling whoever interrupts you that you're in the middle of something and will circle back with them when your timer goes off. That way, you get to blame the timer rather than having to blame yourself or the other person. And for the C personality, you could spend all day going through that pile that might be there. And so that your natural perfectionism doesn't get the best of you, you set that timer and then you'll know when to stop and change gears. You may not like it at first, but it will truly help you keep your sanity and not go down a rabbit hole to the detriment of the other areas of your life. Most importantly, remember this: your sweet spot probably didn't get messed up in 15 minutes. So it probably won't get completely cleared up in the first 15-minute session you focus on it either. If it does, great. If not, be patient and pace yourself. You're building a habit as much as you are clearing a space. So please be kind to yourself, because building the habit is so much more important than the actual clear space, believe it or not. I know the task oriented D and C types understand this implicitly. So for that last part, I really am speaking more to the people oriented I and S types. Once you've got this one thing figured out, then you can extrapolate it to the rest of your home, life, and business. What do I mean by that? My lovely, this is where things start getting really good. Once you figure out the main sweet spot, you create some momentum. Then you learn that every room in your home has a sweet spot. And before you get discouraged by that, I promise you that the momentum that happens with your main sweet spot for the house is multiplied when you figure out the sweet spot in each room. After that, you get to apply the same principles to your business too. Here's how. One of the things that I've always struggled with in my business is keeping up with my finances. And I know that costs me revenue. One day I was listening to a business coach and she started talking about scheduling CEO time, where you work on your business rather than in it. As a content creator and coach, sometimes we get so caught up in the daily to dos of what we do for a living that we neglect to take care of those CEO things until deadlines are looming in our face, like filing taxes or paying bills. What CEO time does is that it carves out time to do the things we keep saying we'll get around to, but we procrastinate because everything seems more urgent right now. Ideally, I like to do this on Friday, but when I first started doing it, it seemed like every Friday something would come up and I couldn't get to it. So I moved it to Monday. And that didn't work well either because I avoided going into my office to get started. And then I realized it wasn't the method or the day that was wrong. It was me because it wasn't something I enjoyed. Hello, inspired personality issue. I was avoiding it. So I made a deal with myself. I now spend 15 minutes on this type of work every week, ideally on Friday, but definitely before the weekend is over. That gives me 3 days to address what is arguably the most challenging task for me in my business success. And if I make it to Sunday without addressing it, I call in the reinforcements, AKA my husband, who sits by my side while I work through it. That may sound like madness to others, but body doubling has always worked for me. So until I can hire a full-time VA to help me deal with these issues, I'm doing what works for me and having as much fun as I possibly can with it. Now, here's the really interesting part. One day while going through this work, I realized what the sweet spot of my business is, and that's connection. I found my best clients when I go to live events and I just meet and talk to people. We talk about business and what we do. And before you know it, I've found another client because they get to know, like, and trust me. Suddenly, my avoidance of the CEO part of my business made sense because it shows me that the more live events I attend, the better my business goes. And that attending to the CEO parts of my business makes it so I can attend more of those live events and have as much fun as possible in the process. Duh. Now, your results may be wildly different, but give the CEO time a try, especially if you struggle in your business or want to take it to the next level. Now, if you find yourself spending all your time in CEO time and not doing the other work, then you have something else to talk to yourself about. But what you need to do is to ask yourself, what makes you come alive in your business? And what makes it feel like time just passes without you even knowing it? That's your sweet spot. So figure out how to do more of that and how you can deal with the less attractive parts of your business so that you can do more of what you love. This also applies to relationships. So we're going to take a quick look at that too. If you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that I am outgoing and my husband is reserved. I love people, socializing, and connection, and he prefers quiet time and staying home. We deal with that through my client work, me going to lunch with friends, and him chauffeuring me to parties so I don't have to park and walk to and from my car all by myself. We know that's not for everyone, but it works for us. I have one driven friend who works from home, and when her children go to bed at night, she gets 30 minutes of no one touching her or asking her for anything. Her husband happily obliges because after that, she's a much happier and calmer person, and she can be the best version of herself with her husband. Again, might not work for everybody, but it works for them. In the case of relationships, it's so cool to find the sweet spot of your relationship. In my case, it's where fun and peace come together. And when the relationship is in that sweet spot, we laugh a lot, we have tons of fun, and we live our absolute best couple life. For a few couples that I know that share the driven personality traits, teasing, banter, and debate is a sweet spot for them. They love it. If two people share an S trait, they may do charity work together. And if they share the C or cautious trait, they may spend an entire weekend cleaning out the garage and finding that incredibly fulfilling. So at this point, do you see yourself or someone you love in all of this? I'll bet you do. And if you'd like to get or suggest help for somebody else, I've got a great opportunity coming your way at the end of March. A while back, I created something called the Whole Home Reset. And I'll be re-releasing that program at the end of the month, starting with a 6-day sprint to get our homes and ourselves ready for the Easter weekend if you celebrate. And for those who don't, it's a great way to get ready for April and spring. Each day, we'll focus on one area of the house and move as quickly as we can through it. And I promise you, if you dedicate 15 minutes per day to the practice, and you don't even have to pick an area of your home, you could pick a certain thing in your business that you want to work on. It all counts, But if you do that, you're going to see progress and you're going to feel so much better about everything. Now, to get more information on that, go to the Moving Toward Better homepage and join the email community. That way you'll get the most up-to-date info in your inbox. If you want to start right now to find the sweet spot in your business or relationships, we can do that together too. Again, go to the Moving Toward Better homepage, click on the Take My Assessment button. After you do that, schedule a personality session from the same page, and we'll get you started on that journey too. So, are you ready to find the sweet spot in your home, your business, and your relationships so you can be a more powerful presence in the world? I hope you are, and I'm going to cheer you on as you do this, whatever pace works for you. Need some help with that? Again, go to the Moving Toward Better homepage. and take the steps that make sense for you. As always, if you like what you've heard, share and subscribe. Until next time, keep moving toward better, whatever that looks like for you. Love you. At Moving Toward Better, it's our mission to help you unlock a fantastic life, powered by what's unique and authentically you. To learn how we can help you in your quest, head over to movingtowardbetter.com to check it out, or use the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being you, and have a great day. Love you all.